The Sahel region of Africa is grappling with a surge in violence, a complex web of conflict with devastating consequences. Jihadist groups, including JNM and IS Sahel, are vying for control, their influence spreading like wildfire. Adding fuel to the fire are local militias, each with their own agendas, further destabilizing the region. The violence has displaced millions, creating a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions. Governments in the region are struggling to contain the escalating violence. Military coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have only exacerbated the situation, creating power vacuums and uncertainty. The withdrawal of these countries from ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, has further isolated the region, hindering collective security efforts. Amidst this turmoil, international actors are increasingly drawn into the conflict. Russia, through the Wagner Group, has expanded its influence, exploiting the instability to further its own geopolitical interests. Their involvement, however, has been marred by accusations of human rights abuses, further inflaming tensions. The Sahel's strategic importance, located at the crossroads of North and Sub-Saharan Africa, cannot be overstated. Its instability has far-reaching implications, threatening to spill over into neighboring regions and beyond. The international community must act decisively to address the root causes of this conflict and prevent further bloodshed. The Fulani people, one of the largest ethnic groups in Africa, are bearing the brunt of the Sahel's escalating violence. Predominantly pastoralists, they are heavily reliant on livestock for their livelihoods. However, the changing climate, coupled with the proliferation of armed groups, has made their traditional way of life increasingly perilous. Fulani herders often find themselves caught in the crossfire between jihadist groups and state forces. They are targeted by extremists seeking to exploit their resources and recruit them into their ranks. At the same time, they face suspicion and hostility from governments who view them as potential collaborators with insurgents. This precarious position has led to a vicious cycle of violence and displacement. As Fulani herders are driven from their lands, they are forced to compete for dwindling resources, exacerbating tensions with other communities. This competition for land and water has fueled intercommunal conflicts, further destabilizing the region. The Fulani, once known for their nomadic traditions and peaceful coexistence with other groups, are now increasingly associated with violence and instability. This perception, fueled by prejudice and misinformation, has made it even more difficult for them to escape the cycle of conflict and rebuild their lives. The Sahel is on the front lines of climate change. Temperatures are rising at an alarming rate, rainfall patterns are becoming increasingly erratic, and droughts are more frequent and severe. These changes have had a devastating impact on the region's fragile ecosystem, exacerbating existing tensions and fueling the flames of conflict. The shrinking availability of water and pasture land has intensified competition between herders and farmers, often leading to violent clashes. Jihadist groups, quick to exploit these grievances, have positioned themselves as protectors of pastoralist communities, offering security and resources in exchange for loyalty. Furthermore, climate change has contributed to widespread food insecurity and displacement. As traditional livelihoods are disrupted, many young people, particularly within the Fulani community, are left with few options and become vulnerable to recruitment by extremist groups. Governments in the region, already struggling with weak governance and limited resources, are ill-equipped to address the multifaceted challenges posed by climate change. This has created a dangerous vacuum that jihadist groups have been all too eager to fill. The path to peace in the Sahel is fraught with challenges, but amidst the violence and despair, glimmers of hope remain. Dialogue and negotiation, though complex and demanding, offer the only viable solution to end the bloodshed and address the root causes of the conflict. Amadou Koufa, a prominent Fulani religious leader and a key figure in JNM, has expressed a willingness to engage in negotiations with governments in the region. While his demands, including the implementation of Sharia law, remain contentious, his willingness to engage in dialogue presents a potential opening for peace. However, negotiations alone will not suffice. The international community must step up its efforts to address the humanitarian crisis unfolding in the Sahel. Millions have been displaced by the violence, facing hunger, disease, and a lack of basic necessities. Humanitarian aid is crucial to alleviate suffering and prevent further destabilization. However, aid organizations face immense challenges in accessing conflict zones, often targeted by armed groups, and hampered by bureaucratic obstacles. Ultimately, a lasting peace in the Sahel requires a multi-pronged approach that addresses the underlying drivers of conflict, including climate change, resource scarcity, poverty, and marginalization. It demands a commitment to dialogue, reconciliation, and sustainable development, ensuring that all communities have a stake in building a more peaceful and prosperous future.